The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been a huge success, having some of the biggest hits over the last 10 years. One of their more popular movies is Black Panther, introducing the hero Black Panther, as well as the Kingdom of Wakanda. Now, Black Panther has appeared in the Marvel Legendary card game before, in part of the Secret Wars, as well as with the Queen Storm later on. But now we finally have expansion just designed around Black Panther and Wakanda, titled Legendary Black Panther. Let's take a look and see who he's bringing to the tabletop now that he's actually being able to shine in his own expansion just in time for another Black Panther movie to hit the cinemas. With our legendary expansions, we start off with the heroes, and it's no surprise here that for this expansion, all the heroes hail from Wakanda. Now, there are a lot of returning keywords, but there are two major new mechanics introduced in this set. And for the most part, all the characters have those mechanics. The first one is ambush, you may see here. What that means is when that card is revealed from the hero deck into the HQ, so when it's flipped over after you've bought another hero, if you reveal I've already played a hero of that matching symbol, usually it's a hero class, but can also be the Wakanda symbol, aka the hero group of everyone in this expansion, and they will trigger a special ability. The other mechanic isn't a keyword, but it is really useful. If you played Legendary, you are very familiar with receiving wounds. They gunk up your deck and give you weaker turns. Now, you can also wound your enemies, including the mastermind. If you wound a villain or mastermind, you give them a wound card. They now have one less strength needed in order to beat them. Yes, you can bring them down to 0 or negative. It doesn't auto beat them, but pretty much you can defeat them without actually playing anything, so it's almost like a free hit. Nearly everyone here has that as well, but why don't we actually look at each hero separately? So we might as well start off with royalty and the king himself, King Black Panther. Now, Black Panther has appeared in previous legendary expansions. When he first appeared, he really focused on dual hybrid hero classes because that was when they introduced it. This one, all the Panther cards have the hybrid class, and his big card rewards you for playing different hero classes. So a nice little callback to that playstyle. The major thing this Black Panther focuses on is 1, ambushes, but 2, the throne's favor. This is actually an old keyword they brought back for this set. Pretty much the throne's favor is, well, they don't have a card. They suggest you use any objects, suggest like find maybe a crown or something you have lying around. And if you don't have it, you gain it. But more often than not, if you already have the throne's favor, you can give it up in order to get a special ability. The throne's favor can be controlled by any player or mastermind, and you can claim it from them if the card says gains the throne's favor. The throne's favor mechanic, probably you only want to have 2 to 3 people unless you decide to stack your hero set with not only the cards here that use Throne's Favor, but where it first originated in Realm of Kings expansion. That way you don't have to feel like you're constantly just taking the throne and never getting to actually use the ability. But if you get multiple of these cards out, it feels really good to play this to get the throne, play this to get the attack, then play this to get the throne back. It really works out very well. And the fact that all his cards are dual hero classes pretty much means he's always going to be able to help out. If you need a tech, he's got everything pretty much you need. I love the original Black Panther with the 2 symbols. This one is just as fun, but for the most part, probably maybe want one other Wakanda hero just to get those ambushes off, and maybe one more Throne's Favor, but not a bad hero, still really fun to play. Next up is the Queen Storm of Wakanda. She has appeared before. She was in the original base set, as well as in a set that actually encompassed both her and King as one group. Now, in this version, she revolves around empowering and red and blue cards. Empowering is an old keyword. If you don't remember, it pretty much means this card is stronger for every hero symbol that it's empowered by. This case is blue, this case is red. And she can also do some moving villains around. She has a lot going for her. She has this weird problem, though, when if you want to buy the card that gets empowering red, then you don't want to buy more of the empowering red cards. But if you mix her with another hero or two that really has a red-blue focus, she can become really scary, especially with her big card, and probably is the strongest one in this entire set. I wouldn't be surprised if she's set up right that she can truly be one of the scariest heroes out there. Next up, we're going to move on to Princess Shuri. Now, she actually reminds me a lot of base set Iron Man. She plays heavily into blue and tech. However, unlike that Iron Man set, which admittedly I found fell a little flat out of the base set heroes, she's got a bit more versatility if you don't get those blue and tech cards. She still has Ambush, which is awesome, and she'll draw, and she does Empowering. So you actually want to leave those cards in there, which is pretty good. But if people aren't buying the right cards, a lot of her more expensive cards actually let you choose what she's empowered by. So you don't have to feel nearly at the whim of the deck in order for her to work out. Unlike Queen Storm, who has the empowered mechanic, but would like at least one other red and or blue, preferably one who focuses on both kind of hero, Princess Shuri has the ability to use her empower to really focus in on everything. Yes, she likes tech empowering with her small card, but it's 2 costs, it draws a card, it has ambush, so even if she's the only other tech person in there, she probably can trigger those herself, and then her bigger cards will still be able to get you quite a bit of power. Next, we have General Okoye, who is not part of the royal family, but still probably one of the strongest people in Wakanda. She is all about dealing and preventing wounds, which is really cool. Her small card actually has you gain a wound to get some strength. But then if you have this card, that's when things get really fun. Once per turn, you can just reveal this card, stop someone from gaining a wound, give a villain a wound, and then draw a card. It does so much, and you don't have to get rid of it. You have these 2 cards together, you're going to have a good time. She has other cards as well that involve even getting rid of more wounds and healing, or even some shield agents. Honestly, this is exactly the kind of hero I like. It's very supportive. It gives very interesting decisions because, hypothetically, if you use this on another player's turn, you could heal them or at least stop them from being wounded, and then wound a villain, pretty much setting them up. Now, remember, this is semi-cooperative, so that might not always be in your favor. But you also get to draw. She brings a lot to the table, and frankly, unlike really any of the other heroes here, she doesn't need any support. She's going to be strong no matter who you mix her with. Her cards will trigger. Yeah, her big card wants a Wakanda symbol, but there are plenty of Wakanda symbols with her as well. So you really don't have to worry who you need to combine with her in order to make her shine. Finally, we have the White Wolf. The White Wolf really loves ambushing, so he's got a lot of ambushing, mostly involving the red symbol, the acrobats, I believe. I always forget that one, and tech. And rewards you for having wounds on villains or the mastermind. And that is where he becomes really strong, but also a little dependent on who you're playing with. All his ambushes will trigger wounds on the enemy, but I actually did try a game with just him and none of the other Wakandan heroes, and every time he came up, I wasn't able to trigger his ambushes, which was just bad luck. I mean, I was playing with other heavy red tech cards, so it should have happened. It just was just poor timing a lot of the time, so he wasn't able to trigger usually his other abilities. But if you have at least one other person who wounds, or, I don't know, actually stack him very well so you don't have the bad luck I did where somehow he just avoided being able to ambush, he's really fun. I mean, wounds on villains and enemies, making them cheaper, it feels so good. But now, let's talk villains. Like all small expansions, this includes some schemes as well as 2 masterminds and 2 villain groups. The masterminds you'll be dealing with now are Killmonger and Claw. Killmonger, as well as the group he leads, Killmonger's League, play off the wound mechanic in a, frankly, very abusive way. You see, when you fight them, you don't actually fight them and take them out. Instead, you will deal damage to them equal to their strength, so in this case right now that would be 3, give them a wound, so now it's only 2 to beat them, and you have to keep going until they are at 0. And both Killmonger and some of the villains in the deck have ways to get rid of the wounds you've already put on them, meaning it can be a really battle of attrition dealing with these villains. That being said, they do get weaker each time, so it usually isn't the worst. Claw, on the other hand, uses the empowered mechanic, so punishing you for having a very similar lineup. What is really interesting about this to me is it really punishes you for using a lot of the dual-colored heroes, something that I find to be really strong and useful, but this time, if you have a bunch of those in your lineup, he's going to become stronger. The enemies of Wakanda, same thing. They pretty much each focus on a different hero symbol and will do some empowering. Finally, we have the 4 schemes. This scheme, the Poisoned Lakes, is really cool because pretty much it's going to start tossing out wounds all over the place. And you actually use a limited wound pool, and if that deck runs out, then the game ends with evil winning. It's really fun as it also makes heroes cheaper, as well as spreading more wounds to the villains, and you have to manage that. It's a lot of fun. The next one involves the vibranium. Apparently it's getting stolen, and then you have to kill smugglers who give the vibranium to a villain. It's a little confusing, and I would probably say the worst thing in this entire expansion. It's not terrible, it just wasn't my favorite. Then we've got Provoking a Clash of Nations. This one's really cool. Every time a twist comes up, without saying anything, people need to vote with either a fist, a palm, or 2 fingers. Depending on whichever one wins the most votes, you, as the one who drew the twist, have to do a certain action. If you do not, then that twist is going to be put next to the scheme, counting as an international crisis. Get too many international crises, then you fail. Oh, by the way, you discard your hand right after voting, so you can't tell everyone, well, my hand is really full with attacks, so I can do the one that involves taking out a lot of the villains. So you never really know what's going on. It's a bit chaotic, but it's, at least for me, was sort of that fun chaos of being like, all right, what do we think we should do kind of deal. The final one is Seize the Wakandan Throne. This one's really simple. Pretty much, the villain's going to capture the throne's favor. Don't let him capture the throne's favor. Make sure you play with heroes using throne's favor. It's a much simpler one, but it uses the throne's favor mechanic. So if you wanted to use that, whether it be from just this set or from the Realm of Kings expansion, that's going to be the one you probably want to mess around with. So in terms of what this expansion brings, I feel if I had to give a tagline for this expansion, it was, that's cute, now it's my turn. Because a lot of what the heroes do here is punishing the villains for what the villains have been doing to us. Ambushing us? Well, now we're going to ambush you. Oh, you're giving us wounds? Well, let's return the favor. And these work really well. It becomes exciting to buy cards because you're like, all right, I'm going to buy this. Oh, I have an ambush that triggers this. And then giving wounds, there are so many times you've played, especially later sets of Legendary, where things get really strong and you're like, it keeps getting so big. But now you can be like, well, I'm going to give him a wound. Now another wound. You start pinging them for damage. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this return in a Legendary encounters with something that's poisonous, as I can see it maybe giving wounds to heroes, and if they hit a 0, they die, or if you have a legendary person who can sort of use poison-tipped arrows or something of that nature to poison the enemies on the field. It's a really good mechanic. And as for the villains that bring up, they have one who's really challenging, at least for me, was the Killmonger, because you have to you don't just beat them, you have to actually take them out multiple times, so it can be really hard to deal with them, even though they get weaker. One villain in his villain group heals every villain on the table. So when she comes out, you're trying to bring him down, and she's like, nope, I just took away a couple turns. So that can be really scary. And then I really found that the Claw was interesting because it punished the dual colors, because if you have a lot of the dual colors in your hero lineup, odds are he's going to have a very good empowered. Then you look at the scheme twists, they all worked really well. Honestly, there is a lot going for this set. The heroes work great. They have fun and challenging masterminds and villains, and the scheme twists have these fun little ways to mess around with, only one of them being a little bit of a letdown for me. Overall, when I look at how everything works together, it's a lot of fun. And while there are some times I'm like, oh, I think Storm would work better if I threw in another hero that had red-blue, it never really felt like the hero was really weak if they didn't have that. Storm could still probably go off with just Storm cards. It's just that she's going to be a whole lot scarier if you chose like 2 other heroes who are red-blue. Then she's just going to start cackling as she just melts the entire field with lightning. If I had to choose a weakest, honestly, it's the guys in the vibranium suits, both King Black Panther and White Wolf. And that's not because I think they desperately need help. It's maybe a little luck dependent, especially in White Wolf's case. You need those ambushes to go off. He rewards you for having wounded people on the field, and he mostly does that through his ambushes. King Black Panther, on the other hand, wants the throne mechanic, And that's more of luck with your own deck in hand. As long as you get 2 cards that either claim the throne and then use it, then it's great. In fact, it's fantastic. Get 3, then you have a lot of fun. And if you throw in some other cards, Queen Storm does it, and like I said, the previous expansion, then you're not going to be too worried. But in a higher player count game, I can imagine that being a bit annoying because you can't hold on to the throne long enough if you only played 1. But it wasn't that bad of a feeling. I didn't never play it 4 because I don't like to play Legendary with 4, honestly. I gotta say, though, if I had to pick a favorite, it's definitely going to the General. The fact that she can just reveal a card whenever a wound's coming up and just go, no, we're not dealing with that. Give me another card and I want to wound that villain. It works so well. It's so good. Putting this on our expansion scale of great, wait, or hate, I gotta say, honestly, this is definitely in the great section. This doesn't beat the original Guardians of the Galaxy, but in terms of an expansion where I see a keyword or mechanic and I'm like, I want this everywhere, this set has it. Ambushing on both, by the way, the enemies are very heavy, ambush heavy too, so anytime something flips, something's going on, super fun. Wounding things really feels powerful because there are plenty of times when you're just 1 or 2 away from killing something, but being able to sort of ping them and weaken them a little bit makes you feel pretty good and low, like, all right, I'm setting them up so this can be killable before it escapes. Everything about it is really fun. I think it's a great expansion and hopefully one where they pull a lot of these keywords and styles for future sets. Black Panther did a fantastic job in this expansion, and I look forward to see what the movie brings and hopefully inspires its own expansion, but it'll probably be in the cinematic version of Legendary. Let me know what your thoughts on this expansion are. It has been out already for a little bit, but I want to tie this in with the movie. So you can tell me if you think this is a really strong expansion of the week, you've played a lot and you found something didn't work as well. Let me know what's your favorite hero group from this expansion. Let me know in those comments down below. Thank you so much for listening. I had a lot of fun with this one, and thank you so much. And if you could do the usual, the like, share, subscribe, the bell, the thing that YouTube likes. But thank you to everyone who goes on Patreon, all my rollers. It really means a lot with all your support. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Grit expansion review.